the table, to me, that's a huge part of it. And you're exactly right.
Doug, with Oregon winning the regular season, obviously Ohio State eventually winning the national championship, and Michigan the year before, what now, a year into the additions of Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA, how does the rest of the original Big Ten look at all that?
Yeah, I know. And obviously and you guys mentioned that Texas-Ohio State game in 2005 was the very first game I ever covered as an Ohio State beat writer. I showed up on Saturday morning in Columbus, Ohio for my new job, and I went to that Texas-Ohio State game that night in the shoe and got introduced to Vince Young. So I've been around Ohio State a long time, and I know, and they've been the program of the Big Ten, and they want it. They want help. They want another team that can help carry the load. And if you thought that was going to be USC, it's Oregon. So Oregon's presence is gigantic for the Big Ten. What if the SEC had added Texas and Oklahoma and the Big Ten didn't add Oregon? Can you imagine? Like Oregon is the Texas answer. And now what can Washington be? What can USC maybe get back to being? It's been only Ohio State for too long, but now you see Michigan stepping up. You see Penn State with a real chance to win it all this year. I think the middle of the Big Ten this year is probably better than it's ever been. But the presence of Oregon, I think it cannot be overstated how important they are. And everybody, like, it's a little far. It's a little far. I think everybody in the Big Ten wants them, though. They're glad they're here.
Nebraska has been a disappointment to them as far as matching the brand name with the performance. Do you foresee that changing now in the Matt Rhule era? It's year 3 of Rhule. The year 3 bump has been a real thing at 2 of the last 3 head coaching jobs. He didn't get year 3 at the Panthers. So we'll never know about that. But it looked like they turned in the right direction, at least nominally last year. And this year, could they maybe start to live up to the branding intersecting with those two?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We were kind of on, he makes a year 2 leap, right? From, you go into year 1, then you make a jump in year 2. A lot of us were on the year 2 jump last year. It wasn't maybe as big as you expected, but they made a bowl at Nebraska, which they hadn't made in like 7 years. So that was a big deal. But you're on it with the Rhule in year 3. And I think the other part of this is, I think the only 2 true freshmen who started in the Power 4 last year for any length of time were C.J. Bailey at North Carolina State and Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. And there's a lot of young quarterbacks that a lot of places are relying on this year. Julian Sain at Ohio State, C.J. Carr at Notre Dame, Ty Simpson at Alabama, Gunnar Stockton at Georgia. Dylan Raiola is with those guys, right? But he played a year and he took a bunch of lumps. He wore down a little bit. He made freshman mistakes. But I think if he had not played and had been behind a veteran, a lot of people would be super fired up for Dylan Raiola, 5-star quarterback, to start for the first time at Nebraska. And instead he played. We saw the warts, and I feel like he's kind of underrated right now. They added a huge receiver in the transfer portal in Dane Key. They added a Bama offensive lineman, a Notre Dame offensive lineman, some guys on defense. I am not going to be surprised if Nebraska is for real this year. But the other thing that happens is there's a lot of people saying the last 7 years, this is the year Nebraska is going to be real. No. This is the year Nebraska is going to be real. So they have to prove it, but I think they have a lot of pieces in place.
Yeah, there's a very interesting middle section there, isn't there, of like the Illinois, what does Wisconsin look like? What does USC look like? What does Nebraska look like? But one team that I don't think many of us expected to talk about at all last year, we ended up talking a lot about them, Doug, was Indiana. Curt Cignetti, a fiery personality, definitely more Indiana head coaching quotes last year than we've seen in like the previous 25 probably. That was obviously good for the Big Ten, but what was that kind of different flavoring coming out of Hoosier land like for the Big Ten, and how sustainable do you think it all is?
So how often, you guys have been around college football for a long time, how often does a coach in the Big Ten tick people off? How often is he the irritant? So it's like, yeah, we said he's like a grandpa with no filter. He has no F's left to give, right? My gosh, does the Big Ten need that? The Big Ten needs somebody who will walk it and talk it. So I know it drives people nuts, but it's like for far too often. I mean, you even like the SEC, Greg Sankey talks it and walks it. Of course they do. Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, doesn't really talk it. So we need people to stand up for the Big Ten. So that's great. Their schedule is going to be more difficult this year. Fernando Mendoza probably is an even better quarterback than Curtis Rourke was last year. They have a lot of good skill back. They have a lot of their key defensive pieces back. They have all Big Ten level players at all 3 levels of the defense. And I think it is sustainable. It is unique in some ways. Last year, he just smushed two teams together, and they had Indiana and all the best players from JMU, and they were like two teams in one. So they've retained a decent chunk of that. But I also think they can build this now. I don't think Indiana's going away. And so we've been talking a lot. Is Illinois the Indiana of this year? And then my co-host at some point said, what if Indiana is the Indiana of this year?
Mm-hmm.
That we don't want to overlook them, but the schedule discussion that was a huge part of college football last year and has had a gigantic effect. You guys, I'm sure you agree. A lot of the playoff discussions and disagreements we're having right now, Indiana is like the pivot point of that discussion. They're going to have to prove it more this year. It won't be as easy. I would be shocked if they go 11-1. I think they could be as good of a team and go 8-4, but I don't think they're going away.
Yeah, because they were a feel-good last year. It was. I mean, they were the feel-good story. And now it's like, okay, wait a minute. We let you in the front door. Now you have to be able to bully your way back to the front door this time, right?
Yeah. I mean, and it's the difference between a team and a program. Anybody can have a good team. You have a good team for a year, but are they going to elevate as a program? And I don't think anyone's expecting them. If the top tier of the Big Ten is Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, not that. But can they be next? Can they be consistently one of the best six programs in the Big Ten? I mean, to hire a 63-year-old head coach who's won everywhere and finally give him his shot, that seems smart, right? Why didn't someone give Curt Cignetti a chance like this earlier? And I do think some of the things you see them doing in high school recruiting, the way they continue to work the portal, I think when you have that reputation that Curt Cignetti does, I think they can be a place where a lot of G5 guys want to jump up and go to Indiana because, that coach, he gets players like me. He gets underdogs, guys with chips on their shoulders. So I think they can continue to be that. And they've invested. All right? And the basketball program has not been very good for 20 years since Bob Knight left. So, okay, does Indiana want to be good at football? I think they have the coach in place. And I think if they want to put the resources into it, there's room for them to continue this.
So you mentioned something about the Big Ten coaches being an irritant and the way that things changed. How much of that was Urban Meyer kind of changed the way that they recruited in the Big Ten as well? Because when he came in, they had this kind of gentleman's agreement of, if you're committed to Wisconsin, we're not going to recruit you. As we're in the SEC, and they're like, no. We'll call him as much as we want to call him until he changes his mind or doesn't. And Urban brought that to Ohio State, and a lot of the coaches didn't like it, but then they all started doing
it. You are leading us through the 25-year winter, a 5-part podcast series. We spent 20 minutes on that. And for Urban Meyer to arrive, because the thing that a lot of people said then when Urban Meyer arrived, Brett Bielema said it, we don't want to be the SEC. And then 3 years later, Brett Bielema left for the Arkansas job. It's like, you don't want to be the SEC? That there was that time that being the SEC was a negative. It's like, we don't want to be the SEC. What do you mean? You don't want to be great? You don't want to care about football? You don't want to win national championships? What part of that do you not want to be? And so the Big Ten had to get rid of that idea. And the guy who led it was Urban Meyer. And then Jim Harbaugh was important in that. James Franklin, having been in the SEC at Vanderbilt, I think was important to that. Dan Lanning acts like an SEC coach because he was an SEC assistant, right? He's so important to that at Oregon that, and I don't want to call it an SEC mindset. It's a ball mindset. It's a winning mindset. It's a championship mindset. It's a no excuses mindset. And so for too long, I think the Big Ten and the North fell back on, we do it the right way. We talk about doing it the right. It's like, what is the right way? Right. The right way is just a way to excuse 7-5. Like, are we doing this or not? You're gonna destroy tradition in your conference. You're gonna build a conference that stretches from ocean to ocean. You're gonna hurt rivalries. You're gonna play all your games at noon. You're gonna go do all these things, but then you are afraid to push the envelope to win. What are you doing? Why are you doing all the other things? Why are you gathering all this money if you're not going to use it to be good at football?
Why did you get that quarterback? Well, in June, he said he was going to Maryland, so we just said no. We're just like,
we don't want to hurt any feelings in the Big Ten. Sorry, everybody. And so, I think we're finally rid of that, because guess what? It's okay to try to be good at football.
Absolutely.
There's no shame in it, and actually, there's a lot of toughness and pride and great things for your community and your university if you're willing to do it.
Doug Lesmerises.